Somehow, I think that the paper is really good, but the Beacon seems to rank higher.
Well, they go wrong. They do some very good projects.
Supposedly the story is with him used to cover this region. He really narrative. And he had the job. I guess like somewhere like Plainville. They had him sitting outside the office for like a half hour. He got inside and like personnel director's office and he just like exploded. And he stormed out.
Instead they got the little guy with the boat.
Yeah.
I was nervous about that. I had this taking a word.
What? Oh, and turn around. Yeah. It sure is bad.
They're getting stable. Pretty good. So they're bringing we got Mezger cables here.
Nothing could start better without Fran Murphy taking a picture of someone. Well, I want to welcome all of you here, particularly our friends who have come from far and wide to honor Fran. As all of you know, this is the 50th anniversary of Fran's beginning day as a Beacon Journal reporter. That was in 1942, and the U.S. was in the midst of World War II. The U.S. had just sunk a bunch of ships out in Japan. The Germans had just sunk a bunch of American ships off the Atlantic coast. Rationing of gasoline and food was about to begin in the country. And get this big news flash of the day, there was going to be light snow in Akron. Well, Fran, that was just the beginning. And there have been a lot of years and a lot of time since then. And we've got a lot of folks here today who would like to share some of those memories with you through the years. Now, I promised Fran that this would be a very quiet occasion. It will be over quickly, but all of the rest of that you can discount, Fran. The first person I want to call on is Sue Murphy. Sue Murphy is the administrative assistant in the advertising department. Here's Sue. Sue has an interesting perspective on Fran. At one point, when a number of years ago, Sue was a stringer for the Beacon Journal, and Fran Murphy was her first boss. So, Sue, why don't you tell us what it was like to work for Fran?
been a big part of my life all the years I've been here, which haven't been all that many, but it's 16 next month. Once upon a time, a long time ago, I was hired as a correspondent here. They used to call them stringers. And I don't think I was hired because I was very good, but where else can you get someone to work for 10 cents an inch? Especially with their postman, I guess. We had an editor in charge of it named Tom Suchan, but it was clear from the beginning that Fran was the boss of correspondence. And she taught me more about this newspaper in a shorter time than anybody has that I've ever worked for since. And that's been quite new too. And I learned very fast basic fundamentals, because I want to tell you, when she called you at 4 o'clock in the morning and woke you up to ask you about photo IDs, you learned to do it right the next time, if you valued your sleep at all. And I had a, I'll tell you how long ago it was probably Fairlawn was still a village. But I used to wonder, when does she sleep? You know, I know she'd be someplace at midnight or 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then she'd be on the phone to me at 4 o'clock at dawn from the paper, and I said, she's incredible. But I admired her energy and tenacity then, and I still do today. I think Fran made all of the stringers feel very, very important and a big part of this kind of exciting business. And I think that's really how she's made all the people that she's written about over the years. The ones that have the kind of thankless little jobs out in the townships and the school boards, she's really made them feel important too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Now, obviously, Sue is much younger than Fran, and we wanted to call upon someone who was a contemporary of Fran. So, Bill O'Connor, would you mind stepping forward? Hi, Bill. You know, Bill writes a piece for the Beacon Journal now. It's kind of quasi-column, quasi-news story called Side Roads. And I think there's a healthy difference between what Fran writes and what Bill writes. Fran writes these really wholesome stories about library board meetings and academic challenge. And Bill, well, I think he's taken a census of all the bars in the area. But we'll let Bill tell his own story. Hi, Bill.
Isn't he quite a guy? Every time I go into one of those bars, they ask me how Dale is. Dale also has to remember that paybacks are hell, and one of them's coming in about 30 seconds. Fran, when I was asked to speak here, my first response was that I was honored to do so. And the second one was I was real sorry I got into it, because I thought this was going to be an in-house thing in the JSK room, and now I look out and I see all these people and I'm scared to death here. But Fran, I'll tell you, I got to thinking about what it was I would say, and on occasions like this, it's very common to stand here and talk about Fran's angelic virtues. I can't do that because she has none. That would be a lie. And I'll tell you why she has none. Fran has been a reporter for 50 years. And angels don't make very good reporters. It takes something different than that. It takes a certain toughness, and Fran has that. And I think with everybody looks at her and thinks about how sweet she is. And if you ever work with her, you know differently. And Fran is a successful reporter because she has on her side a certain toughness that frames all the rest of it. I'll tell you a little story about Fran. When I was first here, when I first was hired here, I saw her, and I had heard of her reputation, because when I went out on any kind of a story, people would say, "Do you know Fran Murphy?" And I didn't know Fran Murphy because I was new to the area. She was a bit of a celebrity. And when I had heard how long she had been here and what she had been doing, I thought, oh, it's one of those, every paper has one, or used to have. We don't have any. A sweet person. I don't know why we don't have one, but we don't have one. But that's what I thought Fran was. And then there were a gaggle of editors standing one day, and they were doing what editors do, deciding where they were going to have the next meeting, to decide when to have the next meeting after that. And Fran walked up to them. When I saw the crowd coming in here, I was going to try to censor this story because I didn't want to offend anybody, but it wouldn't be Fran if I censored it. She looked at them and she said, if I wanted the goddamn thing out of the column, I would have taken it out. Put the goddamn thing back in again. I thought, well, now I really understand a little bit about her. But I think we ought to think about something. 50 years, everybody who goes into this business, interested, I think, I shouldn't say everybody, but most of us go into this business because we like the magic of sitting down and putting something on paper or into the tube and making it come alive and translating our world for other people. But the single most difficult job in any newsroom, and I think anyone will tell you this, is to sit down before that blank screen and make something happen. When it's finished, it looks easy. It's never easy in the process, and it's often scary to do. A lot of times, people begin to realize how difficult that is, and they leave the profession. Or else they become editors. But one way or another, they get away from that screen or get away from that typewriter in the earlier days. For 50 years, Fran has not ducked that challenge. And that's why I say that and the reason that she can do that is because of her toughness. We're all here today, I think, because of the sweetness of Fran. But her quality as a professional, which strikes me more than anything, is that simple toughness. Fran is a good reporter. And that's probably the highest accolade I think that she would ask for, and one that I think she would most honor. And that's exactly what she is. Fran is a top-notch reporter. And when I look out in the newsroom and I see all the women in here, I think that they should realize that the earlier sisters are one of the reasons why you're here, and Fran was one. After the Second World War, when they let go most of the women in the newsroom, they let them go because, well, the husbands had jobs. And Fran stayed because she was self-supporting. And when she stayed, she established a standard that I think all of the women who came after her have inherited. But I'd like to leave with one last thought. We have come here to praise Fran, and then let's just shut up about it because she's going back to work. She's not going to stop doing anything but what she has been doing, and she's going to keep fighting with all of us. When we make a mistake, we're going to hear from her, and you do, believe me. All of that's going to stay the same. So let's honor Fran, but let's not pretend as though she's not going to be doing what she's doing anymore, because she's going to keep right on doing it. And I think I speak for the whole newsroom when I say that it is an honor to work with her. Thank you.
Fran said he must have heard her say that she's not a columnist, she's a reporter. That wasn't bad for an old guy. The next person we're going to hear from is Stuart Warner. And we call on Stuart because he was a columnist at one point, and we thought that he might be able to talk to Fran on a columnist-to-columnist basis. So Warner's Corner, would you come forward, please?
I'll talk to her on an editor-to-columnist basis, because Fran, I don't want you to get the big head with all these people here. You got a deadline to meet tonight, and we expect you, not that you ever made one before, but we... And this is no excuse for being late tonight. Two deadlines. Oh, you probably, yes, that's right. You got the Sunday. I always like to thank Fran for making me look bad. She would write 6 columns a week, plus 3 or 4 other pieces. And then when she'd go on vacation, like 3 weeks to Russia, she wrote the entire 3 weeks of columns ahead of time before she went. Larry Williams came up, why don't you do that? Write some of yours before you go on vacation. I decided, that's not a good example to set. And we don't appreciate you setting that kind of example by the rest of us. But I did want to know, I guess you all know what Christy Brinkley and Fran Murphy have in common, besides the high sense of fashion. And that would be, they're both cover girls. And we would like to present Fran on behalf of Ann and Robin, who took the picture of a framed copy of the Beacon magazine from Sunday that, for the first time, I want you to know, if you've seen the picture, it took her 2 weeks, but she finally did see some of the floor in her office. And it was the first time many of us had seen this. But Fran, we thank you for the 50 years here, for setting an example for all of us.
Our next speaker is also a columnist and a longtime Beacon Journal staffer. Her name is Jewell Cardwell. And I'll tell you a little personal story about Jewell. Jewell writes more stories a week than I do. But every Thursday night when I'm ready to write my Sunday column, when I return to the office, I find that Jewell has slipped a piece of paper under the door suggesting a column for me to write. Now, I must tell you that I'm most thankful for this piece of paper because I usually don't have the foggiest notion what I'm going to write. But Jewell's ideas are always just stellar, and since Fran writes so many columns a week, I thought that maybe she had slipped a few of the ideas to Fran too through the years. Jewell, why don't you talk to us about your experiences with Fran?
Other than just learning from Fran, and particularly the whole concept of being attentive to detail, I have one major Fran story, and I think it happened a few weeks after I started here. It was in the spring, and we were all parking up on the fifth level, and I didn't know Fran. I was just learning where the bathroom was, and the blue room, and all of those things. And I think at that time it really was the blue room. It was painted blue. But I remember coming in early one morning. I was driving in from Canton, and I saw this silver-haired lady laying over the steering wheel in her car, and I was convinced she had had a heart attack. So I kept thinking, I don't know if I should go downstairs first or just check her. So I remember putting my hand through the window was rolled down, checking Fran's pulse, and I got cussed out royally. Well, your mouth was open, and it was and I was convinced that you had a heart attack. Then I came down, and I think I was either talking to Tim Smith or Sue Chan, and I told him what happened. They said, well, that would be Fran. That's how I met Fran Murphy. And I think that quite a few of us have had similar encounters, but loving encounters with Fran. And I've come to find out later on, a few weeks later, that Fran is quite a lady. I had the good fortune of learning the ropes because Fran went to Australia and New Zealand, and I filled in for her for 5 weeks, so I know what she does, and I know about the volumes of mail. I used to do that. Yeah, so I was there for 5 weeks. So I want to say to you, Fran, that I've learned from you, and I've loved learning from you, and we all love you, and I think that's testimony with the turnout today. So, and she hasn't cussed me out anymore since then.
Is John Dotson around? John, I saw a hand go up. John is the new publisher of the Beacon Journal, as most of you know. He hasn't been here as long as Fran's been here. But I think he's fast developing some insight into Fran and insight into our Good Morning columnist. John, you want to say a few words, please?
In a meeting recently, someone asked what was going to happen when Fran retired. And I said, but I just got here. I don't know, is she about to retire? And the person said, I don't know. So I said, well, as far as I know, she's not going to retire. And I don't know what we would do when she does. In any event, Dale and I were talking, and Dale said, you know, Fran is a prodigious producer. And I said, boy, I'd like to know more about that. So Dale went back to Butex, and he got out the number of stories and columns that Fran has done. And the Butex only goes back to 1985. And so he thought, well, let's take the last 5 years. And so since 1987, when Fran was 65 to today, she has produced 478 stories. Prodigious, absolutely prodigious. And I don't know what Fran is going to do or how long Fran is planning to continue. But I sure hope it will be for a long, long time, and certainly as long as I'm here. So we've got a long time to write. Thank you very much. And
this is going to be one of the fun parts. I'm going to call on Chuck Ayers to make a presentation. Chuck?
Well, you know, Fran's been here 50 years. In typical Beacon fashion, I got asked to do a card about 10 minutes ago. And I didn't have time to do it, so I ran down to Scott's downtown and bought a card. Got this postcard down there. There's a couple signatures on the back.
Fran, that was in the form of a postcard, I believe, and everyone knows that Fran also has a prodigious collection of postcards in her home and elsewhere. I suspect there are a few still tucked away over there in the office. We're going to call now on Jim Crutchfield, the managing editor, who has a few things from people who couldn't come today, but who wanted to tell you about Fran. Jim?
First of all, we have a poem from someone here who wants to remain anonymous. An itinerant writer named Fran, 52 years ago, joined BJ Clan. Then her travels began in her sleeper sedan, and the whole world came under her scan. She's outlasted each BJ top man. She's won thousands of friends, each a fan. She's a skilled artisan. She ain't no courtesan. But a model BJ veteran. So, good morning. As this day began, to pay tribute is our major plan to the Beacon's real heart, whose life's work is true art. Here's to next 50 years. Godspeed, Fran. This next note is from Ken and Vera Cole. Dear Fran, how my 41 years of Beacon Journal employment fade into insignificance stacked against that half century of yours. The better part of my years is that almost all of it was spent with you as a co-worker. With stories we can tell, but we won't, will we? We share much, including great times at Kent State School of Journalism with the late, great William Taylor. And how about the experience with our mutual friend, City Editor Ray L. Sutton? I wish I could be there to relate a couple stories about Francis B. Murphy, but I'm certain there will be plenty to tell. Garrett and I want you to know how much we value your friendship. Nobody, emphasize nobody, ever fill your shoes at 44 East Exchange Street. With much love, Ken and Vera Cole. There's a P.S. on that. Please remember that feet first ain't the best way to leave the picture. 2, Francis B. Murphy. From Bill Hershey. Read. Apology. Date, January 28, 1993. I'm sorry I forgot to get maiden name, if applicable. Elementary school, junior high school, grandmother's maiden name, favorite Akron radio station, possible ramifications for Radio Hall of Fame, favorite tourist site in 5-county region or area, depending on who editor is. of every person written about in Washington with roots in Akron area or region, depending on editor, not to mention the same information about person's spouse and all children and their spouses, not to mention whether Akron-rooted person's dogs, cats, goldfish came from 5-county region/area, should be satisfactory to all editors. Not to mention whether person's spouse or children ever shopped or ate at downtown Woolworths. You are a crafty veteran, please don't change. But put "I'm sleeping" sign on card to help newcomers understand. Francis B. Murphy, my God, 50 years. It seems as though it was only yesterday when you were snapping everyone's picture for posterity with that 10-ton speed graphic. I believe I was a toddler at the time. Time does indeed slip by rapidly, but I see that you are still toiling in our vineyards, keeping the good folks of Summit, Stark, Wayne, and all over well informed. Francis, I really miss the great conversations we used to have. I particularly miss your insight. Remember all those good tips you used to give me when I was the Beacon Journal's illustrious farm editor? Still trying to figure this out, right? Hang in there, Murphy, and go another 50 years. The next 50 will be a piece of cake. In my book, you are a journalist's journalist. You have always carried the banner for the little people, who probably would not have been heard except for you. All reporters should possess your sensitivity. I'm glad I had the privilege of spending 29 years with you at the Beacon. You are a true champion. And then signed Alfred's Inspector. This last one is from, it says, Dear Fran, 50 years at the Beacon Journal, and you're still running circles around all the youngsters out here. Still writing a column almost every day and delighting your readers with those wonderful Ohio travel stories. Is there a nook or cranny of Ohio where you haven't taken Beacon Journal readers yet, Fran? I hope there are a few, because the folks there don't seem to have any intentions of turning you loose for more pastoral pleasures of your own. If I have one regret here, it's that I haven't had a chance to see your outhouse slideshow. Keep that in mind if you're ever down our way. Meanwhile, I know you're ready to hitch up your coveralls and get on with your next assignment. But take the time to enjoy yourself with the Beacon Journal family today. May your life continue to be filled with many good mornings. And it's signed Jim Batten, CEO of Akron, writing from Miami. Lastly, it's my pleasure, Fran, to give you something that I think is very appropriate, considering your love of travel. So, very simply, 5 $100 AAA certificates for travel anywhere you want to go. Thank you.
We're almost through with you. One of the people who retired most recently was Craig Wilson, and Craig would like to tell a 1-minute story. I repeat, a 1-minute story about Fran. Craig?
Thank you, Dale. I like to feed items to columnists, to do it with almost all. And I went down to Cooner's Apple Orchard on South Arlington Street when Ron's parents ran it, and I was picking apples, and I found a Siamese apple. 2 apples joined together as one. I'd never seen anything like that before. Wow, this is interesting. I showed it to some people, and I'd say, what am I going to do with this? I know, I'll give it to Fran for her column. So I made out a little note, and I left it on Fran's column desk that night. And the next day, I asked her about it. And, did you get the apple? And she said, yes, it was delicious.
not bad, and that was only 47 seconds. Fran, I think the message is that all of these folks who have written and all the folks here today are here to honor you for your service, for your friendship, for your loyalty, and for your counsel. And we want to give you a small token of our appreciation for all of the years you've done that, and as a reminder of what it has been like today. So if you'll come up, I'll give you another gift. Francis, would you like to say a few words to the assembled multitude?
Since I thought it was coffee and cake in the JSK room, I didn't prepare a speech. Aren't you lucky? I guess maybe I just have to say what my mother always said. Thank you. My mother was a country correspondent for the Times Press, which was in this building before the Beacon Journal, and then she was invited to continue. So that much of what I do is really what she taught me. And when I used to work elections, the kids who worked with me hated to hear me say, well, back when I helped my mother, I held a flashlight outside of every polling booth in northern Summit County. Because when I started, and when she was a correspondent, the election board hand-counted everything. And the boondocks didn't get counted until the day after, so that if you voted for a mayor in Hudson, you did not know on Wednesday who won. You found out on Thursday, and Mother thought that was wrong. So Maria made big charts and went around every polling place across from Northfield, Twinsburg, Hudson Peninsula, and then went home and added it all up, wrote her stories, and drove into Akron with the stories. So that was why I love doing so many different things. I really have enjoyed working with all of you. I got one card from a retired printer in Florida saying that they'll miss my column now that I'm retiring. When I got the JSK award, they also said I was retiring, and obviously, I'm not retiring. I don't know. People always ask me that, and I have no idea. As long as I'm healthy and feel I'm doing something, I guess I'll continue. It has changed a great deal in the years. I know that Betty J. Cox retired at 65 because 65 was the requirement. Kenny Nichols retired at 70 because that was the cutoff date at that time. And obviously, since I am now into 1993, I'm, as they say, starting my 71st year, I'm still here. I guess Ronald Reagan kind of helped me on that one. But I have enjoyed working with all of you. Sometimes I think I've enjoyed the print shop, the composing room, even more than the editorial room, because back on the Northfield News and the Talmadge Home News and all those weeklies that I worked on, I actually set type and enjoyed working in makeup. And all of you young kids, and you know, everybody is younger than I am now, I do thank you for your friendship and your loyalty. And keep going. Thanks a lot.
Okay, there's cake and soft drinks and other things up front, and we invite you all to stay around and enjoy it with us. And those of you who are reporting and editing, it's time to get back to work. We've got a paper to get out. Thank you very much.